Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan here. And, the Eagles had another tough loss, 37-19 to the Los Angeles Rams in the home opener. Adam, I don't think we're going to tell people in this podcast that the season's over by any stretch of the means. We've kind of been through this before. But I don't think we're going to be talking anybody off the ledge either. I would say you and I have discussed this a little bit. There have been some fundamental, repetitive problems that are hurting this team, and many of which we addressed in our Inside the Birds pregame live show. And if not you or me, then certainly Trey Thomas and Greg Cosell, who hit on a lot of – altogether, if anybody didn't catch the show, I really urge them to. We're 2 hours before kickoff on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter of at Inside Birds. And a lot of the issues that we talked about with whether it's Carson Wentz and the mechanics or the linebackers or even what the Rams do well and how the Eagles need to be prepared for that, were covered. And it's kind of surprising because – the coaches talked about what the Rams do well, and yet the players certainly didn't execute it. So we're going to get into a lot of that today.
Yeah, so Greg Cosell called out everything that the Rams do. He said, this is what you're going to get. The Eagles got it. They couldn't stop it. So Greg, home run there. Trey Thomas talked about, and Greg talked about the same thing in terms of the rules for the linebackers against what the Rams do. The Eagles failed miserably at linebacker. We'll get to that. Trey talked about the offensive line before the game. Explain what needed to happen. Now, it did happen. He was right about it. The offensive line actually played well. I don't want to say surprised, but considering how many changes they've had the last couple of weeks, they improved, so that was a good thing. We talked about Carson's mechanics. Cosell pointed out exactly what you and I pointed out a year ago. My source at another team told me Carson does not reset his feet after RPOs. His feet are too spread apart. Cosell brings it up. He brings it up on the show on Sunday, our pregame show. Mm-hmm. I'm watching the game, and I know on TV copy, it's not – you never fully evaluate quarterbacks on TV tape. If you do, you should be fired. Nobody's going to do that. But you have to have an opinion. You have to do some homework.
Right.
So on HD TV, you can see certain shots, the footwork of the quarterback. And wouldn't you know it, I saw 6 throws where his feet were too far spread apart.
Yes.
And again, you brought this up 2 weeks ago, and I can't emphasize this enough. This is the best point I've heard in talk radio, anywhere. The messages are given to Carson. The tape is the true serum. But is he accepting the coaching? Because he's doing the same thing wrong 2 games in a row right now. And quite frankly, he was doing it wrong last year, but then he'd get on a hot streak where he'd play exceptionally well. Obviously, the final quarter of the season, he was great. But the question is, what is going on, Geoff? What has happened here with his mechanics? All this, I don't see all of a sudden, obviously, it really started to go south a little bit last season. Very inconsistent. These first 2 games, Geoff, there's a problem here.
There is a problem, and I thought you did a good job last year of also pointing out that even when Carson and the Eagles won 4 games in a row to win the division at the end of the year, that mechanically he still wasn't perfect. He was just doing a better job of overcoming them and making better decisions. If everybody can remember, Carson did not throw a single interception after that Miami loss. He finished the last 4 games without an interception, and that helped him overcome mistakes. Now, in the opener, he threw 2 interceptions, 2 very costly ones. And then, of course, in this game, as we'll get into, obviously Miles Sanders puts the ball on the carpet, not a very good start for them. But Carson's interception in the end zone, a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, was really a back-breaking type of poor decision because the Eagles had been – stable, and they weren't panicking when they fell down early, and they were starting to sustain their momentum. And that was just a really bad throw, a late throw, and then a bad throw. And unfortunately, those are the type of things that Carson couldn't – because of that, some of his other issues, and Dallas Goedert probably had 3 or 4 passes that should have been in his hands and weren't. Those turnovers really hurt and did not allow the Eagles to overcome any of the sloppiness that was going on. So,
all right, so I will say this. I'm told on the pass to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, on that route, okay, he needs to cut it harder. He needs to have more urgency.
You talking about J.J. or
the Arcega-Whiteside, the interception that went through, over the middle in the end zone?
Right.
JJ has to cut it harder. He has to have more urgency on that route. Yes, Carson should never thrown it. Okay, I get that. You're right. Whoever's
A little
out there saying-
earlier. I thought maybe if he'd thrown a little earlier, he had a chance to lead him.
hard to say because I'm not able to get this is a problem with the TV copy, but I had to ask someone who would know better, who had better access. So I said, hey, what do you know about it? He goes, that's called an over route. He's got to cut it harder and he's got to go faster. He's got more urgency. I was like, okay, this is a real football person telling me. I'm like, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Right.
So, listen. This is a young receiver group other than Jackson. They're not ready for prime time yet. They're just not. They're not. They're struggling. Hightower. This goes to show you once again. Training camp is the minor leagues. This is the regular season. This is the major leagues. John Hightower has not been seen since the preseason.
Yeah, that was kind of what we saw from. Not this early, but last year when Miles Sanders had a few times he put the ball on the carpet and he just wasn't playing as well. You saw that Jordan Howard started to get. I think after the Green Bay game, you started to see Jordan Howard kind of pick up and get a little bit more reps. And it wasn't until later in the year that they felt more comfortable with Miles Sanders. So unfortunately for John Hightower, he's not even going to get a couple of weeks because he's not a second-round pick or a first-round pick. He didn't have a good opener, and it might be a little bit before we see him on the field again. I don't know. We'll have to see because J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was given opportunities and, take the interception away out and the urgency. He just didn't – the guy doesn't get – he doesn't make anything. He's a second-round pick and he's not on the play.
Right. The term is he does not command the football.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is the quarterback will go to the people who he depend. Let's say Arcega-Whiteside's the 2 on the play.
Mm-hmm.
He might wind up being the 4 if the quarterback doesn't have any confidence in him. I'm not saying Wentz does or doesn't. I don't know Wentz personally, but the results tell you all you need to know. Arcega-Whiteside has not commanded the ball since he's been drafted.
Right.
He's better than he's shown, but the clock is ticking. We're assuming that Jeffrey's going to be back, like the Eagles said he would, before 6 weeks are up.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey only plays one spot. That's the X. Ward is their slot receiver. More or less their slot receiver, although Jackson will line up the slot, Rager will line up the slot. But the fact of the matter is right now, they're not getting enough out of the receiver court. Jackson, I don't know if he might have had 1 or 2 targets in the first half. Then they really targeted him in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
But their passing game's all out of whack. It's just not – look, Carson Wentz is not comfortable. He's not looked good. Here's another number. This is a number that matters more than any number that in these 2 games. They're -5 in turnover ratio, okay? They haven't forced a turnover yet. I'm sorry they did, but –
just with special teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Defense hasn't.
Listen, I don't even want to talk about the defense right now because we're going to get to it. I don't want to give it all away. But they got problems on both sides of the football, man. I knew people would get all excited about how great the defense played week 1. They weren't challenged, okay? This team has issues, but they're very lucky. They've only played 2 games, and they got the garbage Bengals playing next week. I don't usually use that term for an NFL team, but the
Bengals fight, though. The Bengals put up a pretty good fight.
Credit.
They're not going to come in here and lay down. Yeah,
they're bad, though. They're really bad. Their offensive line is an embarrassment. They fight. You're exactly right. Against the Cleveland, they should have been blown out, but since he came back, but this could be elixir for the Eagles, but as Geoff said earlier, that's an excuse. The fact of the matter is this football team has not played well. They haven't played even close to a full game yet in terms of both sides coming together at the same time. They play like they haven't even come close, and I know they've only played 2 games. I know how bad the division is. That's another thing that they get lucky with, but you can't ride by that, man. They got so many issues here. Every team, people are saying, and it's a fair point, hey, look, listen, the Eagles have the same issues that the other teams did. They didn't have an offseason. Yeah, but you know what? There's some teams that find a way to play much better. The team they just lost to on Sunday, they had to travel 5.5 hours, and they had a 3-hour time difference, and sure as hell that didn't impact them at all.
Holy cow. You just saying that made me think about the fact that this has been the NFL upside-down world or bizarro world because – last week, you had 2 West Coast teams travel, play 1 o'clock games in the East Coast and win, right? The Raiders beat the Panthers and Seattle beat Atlanta. And now you had the Rams come and do it pretty convincingly against the Eagles. That's usually not the case. And I don't know if that's because no fans is such a neutralizer or if it's a little bit of an anomaly, but that's pretty crazy because that stat is almost overwhelmingly favoring the East Coast team. But so far, not this year. Let's talk. By the way, for our listeners who may not know or remember, the beauty of us doing this podcast, but also being able to gather more information is we're going to be on 97.5 The Fanatic tomorrow night, Inside the Birds Radio. Tonight, Monday night. Inside the Birds Radio will be heard 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. So make sure you tune in because certainly Adam and I will have even more information than we do for this podcast. And then we can take a few calls and really get into more meat and potatoes. Doug will have probably have a press conference and we'll go through what he has to say as well. And God, hopefully the all 22 will come out in some kind of timely fashion.
We'll know. You don't have to worry about it. I already have. Listen. We're gonna have.
I like to watch it though. It was like 4 days.
But from the professional people, we're gonna know a little bit more than we normally would this year. I have a little bit better access around the league, right? Because I'm getting to the Eagles' opponents earlier, and they're able to watch the tape on Monday morning. Mm-hmm. So later today, I'm gonna be able to do that. Listen. When we look at the Eagles' issues now, the only thing I could say it's a positive is that it's all correctable to a certain degree. And again, we'll do defense in a couple minutes. But offensively, Geoff, you'd said something before we started the show. With Wentz, how is he being coached? We talked about this in our pregame show. We sadly nailed it. I wish I was wrong, but I just know it's been a problem. I really wonder if Carson's listening, because the term that I've come up with based on people I spoke with, he's trying to play hero ball. He's trying to do way too much. Way too much. When you force the football when you don't have it, it's just not what you want to. It's just like, hey, listen, what did you brought up the point on our pregame show with Dan Orlovsky in our interview with him. He talked to Stafford. Instead, he go, why would you make a throw like that? He's like, because I thought I could make it.
Yeah.
It's the issue.
So the question I'm starting to wonder, and it's just a question, it's just something to wonder. We're not going to have it answered by the end of this podcast or even by next week, right? Is the question that we sometimes have asked, or we have asked going back to last year and this year, is Carson taking to his coaching, right? And does Doug Pederson need to ride Press Taylor harder or ride Carson harder? And what I was telling you before the pod was, are we asking the right question in that, we know they brought in Andrew Briner, we know they brought in Marty Morningweg, and we know they brought in Rich Scangarello, and all of these guys are offensive minds, and many of them are known for working with quarterbacks in particular. So I wonder, are there too many chefs in this case? Does Carson feel like he has to answer to more than one person? And I'm not trying to make an excuse for playing poorly, but you talked about hero ball, and when you bring in new coaches, especially ones who have been offensive coordinators before, like Marty and like Scan, and his own quarterbacks coach has not been one. I just wonder if there's just a lot of things going on around Carson's head, and it's hard for him to be tunnel visioned in that regard. It's just something that I think is curious.
It's hard to answer that question. It's too early because we've only had 2 games. It's something we're definitely going to monitor. But what I had brought up, you brought up the subject, so we delved into it in our pregame show, is what has happened since Reich and DiFilippo left. I told you on our first show in 2018, I said at some point there are going to be issues with these guys leaving. I don't know when. I didn't say I knew when it was going to be. I can't give you those answers. No one could. But at some point over the next few years, it's going to be a problem because of the way that they coach Wentz, particularly DiFilippo, who is known to be confrontational in a professional way. He knows what he wants, and he gets it. He's never had a failure at quarterback, and Frank Reich did a really good job of mentoring Carson. They just did a brilliant job. And I'm not saying Press Taylor's not a good coach. I know he's very smart. But something I've heard repeatedly over the last 2 years is Carson needs to be coached hard and harder. Okay. Only Doug Pederson can answer this question. Number one, Doug, do you need to get more involved in the coaching? From making sure Carson is taking the coaching, and then what happens in the meeting room after you watch the tape on Monday or Tuesday when you have him in, because you're showing him this tape, and Carson knows it. He knows he didn't play well. He didn't play well in the Rams game either. He played better than he did in week 1. When you see him repeatedly spread his legs out, as Greg Cosell brilliantly pointed out on our pregame show, what are you doing to correct that? And if you are correcting it, why isn't he doing it? And then at some point, 6 weeks from now, if this still continues, hopefully this won't happen. What are you going to do then? You're going to have answers. It's not working right now.
No, it's not. The weird thing is, Adam, we've seen Carson kind of go through this before where he's been streaky and then all of a sudden, things are okay. And so things need to get okay quickly because
Yeah.
0-2, the Bengals come to town. All right, that's good. I mean, it's a game you really should win. And then maybe you're
Oh, my God.
fortunate with the
If they
49ers
lose-
and how banged up they are, right? Oh man, if they lose to the Bengals.
Yeah, I just want to say,
Adam, it's
before you get to the Niners who are banged up, if
Yeah.
they go 0-3, and I know the NFC East is bad, but when you
Mhm.
lose to the NFL's worst team at home, I don't care if they're 50,000 fans or 0 fans, which we have now, you don't lose to bad football teams.
Right.
They're coached better than that. Eagles have a good coaching staff. As much as I've been critical of some of the things that have happened, our job is to tell the truth and we're not fans.
Mhm.
We go by what we know and we put it out there. They're coached better than this. They're not playing to this point. They're not playing well. They're not playing to the way that they're coached. And I can't tell you why. We don't have enough information yet. It's only 2 weeks. But folks, it's not just one side of the football. So you need to get out of this defense is playing well. It's not playing well. They didn't play greatly week 1. They weren't tested.
Well,
So
let's get.
you need to,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to
No,
get
go
into
ahead.
the coaching element that you're bringing up.
My
Because
bad.
Once again, no, it's okay. Once again, Doug Pederson had a very good plan to keep Aaron Donald from wrecking the game. The man has no sacks against the Eagles, and I think I heard he has a sack against every team he's played except the Eagles. So that's pretty interesting. They had a very good plan. The offensive line did a decent job. The running game was there. Doug leaned on it more than he did last week. Carson didn't get hit very much.
No.
So, but the one thing that really strikes me is that with all the guys we talked about and the new concepts, there was one play I remember in the first half where Jalen Reagor motioned to the backfield and then kind of caught a swing pass, and I thought that was pretty creative. They got a first down on it, but there's just not there was. I get the short stuff. I get you're trying to use the short game to neutralize the pass rush and Aaron Donald, but it's very uncharacteristic to see almost no deep throws in the first half. And I don't see a creative approach. Man, when we talked about Doug in that Super Bowl year and all the creative things he did with Aguilar and the gadgets and the way he was able to, the flea flickers, right, that you remember against Atlanta in the playoffs, or was it Minnesota? Maybe it was Minnesota. We're just not
Minnesota,
seeing it.
yeah. Oh, God,
yeah. And the run game that we thought was going to be spiced up a little bit with motion and misdirection, I saw a lot of that. The only problem is they were wearing blue and yellow, whatever the Rams wear. Where was it with the Eagles?
Okay, and again, we only have 2 games. Let's give this time. Wright gone, DeFilippo gone, Mike Groh gone. Now you could say what you want about Mike Groh as an offense coordinator, but that year, Reich and Groh had third down. This is 3 years ago now, so I'm just remembering. And DeFilippo had red zone,
right?
And they were brilliant. Okay, these guys are gone.
Yeah.
So when you look at Scangarello, he's supposedly a pretty sharp guy, and I'm told he did a great job in Denver. They just had which typically happens. An offensive coach has a conflict with his defensive head coach. This seems to be the running theme around the National Football League, but I digress. Something will happen eventually in terms of all the stuff you were just talking about. They're going to do it, but I think also you were alluding to it. They need to stretch the field more. Now, what's happened, what I do know is Jack Del Rio put in that really good scheme to take away the Eagles' deep ball. They had it covered pretty well, though we know in week 1, Reagor should have had that 65-yard touchdown, which we thought initially that Carson overthrew. He didn't. We talked about it. We all know that Jalen stopped running. He should have kept running. So, okay, we got that week 1. Week 2, I was told by someone who watched the game on television but who works in the National Football League, he goes, it looked like, without watching the coaching tape, that they played a lot of cover 2. They were not going to give up the deep ball. So if that's the truth, and we'll get it confirmed once the coaching tape's available, we'll go to our sources. If that's what they're telling us, then you know what you do? Wear your crossers. If you can't get it deep, I want to see crossers. Okay? I want to see crossers, digs, deep comebacks. And they're also missing, and I know people think I'm crazy, but I'm going to say it again. They're missing Jeffrey's possession receiving. They really need this guy because he's a dependable pass target. These young kids are just not ready yet.
Yeah, and real quick, I do agree with you. And I thought watching the even from the TV, you could see some decent amount of cover two, but there are cover two beaters where you can get the ball deep. I mean, 4 verts. I mean, you got Deshaun Jackson. You
Figure it out.
Right, you can figure it out. Last year in the opener, they had an issue getting Deshaun deep, and then all of a sudden the second half, bombs away.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So it can be done. They had an effective enough running game. It can be done. It was just very strange. I agree, though. It was a little strange that Deshaun had I believe he had 0 targets in the first half, and then wound up having more targets and catches in the second half.
Nine targets.
Receivers. Just a very odd.
Yeah, it was it. They're just not in sync, and I also think Wentz's lack of time with the young receivers, Hightower, who didn't even have a target, who's just gone south after 2 games. I mean, not south. What I mean is, he has not shown up in the 2 games. He's not looked anything like he did in training camp, where everyone raved about him. It's not just Geoff and I. It's people work for the Eagles, and everyone raved about Hightower, and he's not shown up for the first 2 games. Rager, it's been okay, but they need more out of him. And Djax and Wentz's timing is clearly not there yet. And they've really not worked together very much, Geoff, as you know. So they're kind of struggling through this. The positives before we move on to the defense, I thought Sanders overall looked good. He looked a little bit out of sync the first 4 or 5 carries. Then he got rolling. I thought he looked they had a couple of nice plays in the passing game with him. He's only going to get better. As we told you in our pregame, this is what we know. He looked great 2 weeks ago, great this week. He looked pretty good. And I'll say this about Boston Scott. We beat him up pretty badly last week. He did a good job. He provided that change-up role, Geoff, which we told people a few months ago, actually several months ago. That is the role that he's destined to have, and he's really good with it.
He reminds me, and not in build, because he's a lot bigger. He's a lot differently built than Darren Sproles. But the way he is used reminds me so much of Sproles. He hurts you in the return game. He hurts you on those quick passes. He has a very sneaky way of getting in between tackles and creating extra yards. And he can get you a few runs up the middle or even on the zone, just like Darren Sproles could too. He just reminds me of that type of player. I mean, they're clearly not going to the Hall of Fame. Like, Sproles could potentially be a special team Hall of Famer, but with the way they use him and his impact, it does remind me of that. I do want to also talk about the offensive line, Adam, really quickly. But first, I want to tell everybody, remember to download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code ITB for a special offer when you sign up. That's code ITB for a special offer when you sign up, and that's only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The offensive line looked better. They were, obviously Carson Wentz was not hit a whole lot. Was he even sacked? I don't even remember if he got sacked. I mean, maybe once, but he was not under siege. He was not on the run a whole lot unless it was designed. And crazy enough, Matt Pryor had to come in to play left guard for Isaac Seumalo, and the world didn't end. I mean, the way the coaches.
First of all, I know people are like dumbfounded by what happened to Matt Pryor. We gave you the answers to the test, folks. If you're not new to our show, you should remember we said he did not have a good training camp. That's all you need to know. He got benched. I mean, it's not a secret. For the reporters who missed it at training camp, I saw some people there were some local reporters who were puzzled by why isn't Pryor playing? Well, it's not a secret. He had a bad training camp. Disappointing training camp.
Right. But I still side with the idea that Nate Herbig couldn't have been so much better, that he warranted a start when Pryor had more experience. I will. That's just me.
But you know what? He only had a game. I know Trey Thomas felt that. Trey told us on our show that he felt that Pryor played well in the playoffs. Okay, but that was then. This is now. He had a disappointing training camp.
Yeah, it must have been terrible.
Well, you know what? If you look at the dominoes, Geoff, if you look at where he was to start training camp, keep going down to the bottom, because that's where he ended it.
Sure. No, that's fair. As we talked about, putting him at left tackle didn't do him any favors when he had never played there. So I don't know if they were expecting.
I agree.
But you do have to fight when you're a lineman. I'll give you that. You got to show some fight. You got to suck it up. We got on Andre Dillard's case last year when he kind of, I have to go play right tackle, and it's like writing with a different hand. No, you got to get in there. And so I'm not trying to be a Matt Pryor defender. I just thought the experience in the season opener, and you saw some of those communication breakdowns, might have been resolved by having someone.
I agree. I agree. He's not a left tackle. I'm no offensive line aficionado, but I for the life of me, and I have such a high respect for Stoutland, but for the life of me, I don't understand once I had heard that Mailata was doing well in practice, he should have been the backup left tackle. End the speculation. He's a backup left tackle. You make a great point and a fair point. Pryor's a backup right tackle. He also could play guard. If you think Herbig's better than him, that's fine. So but kind of, it's okay if you want to cross train. Okay, I get it, and that's the way most teams are now. But the clearly defined roles, guys know what their expectations are. Mailata is a guy that he's not a guard, and he hasn't done any guard work that I know of. So keep him at left tackle, and if he has to play right, he can do it. We just talked about Pryor. Herbig, actually, what I was told was, yeah, he does need to probably lose a little bit of weight, but he's strong as hell. He's big, and here's the difference between he and Pryor. Pryor is way bigger, taller. Pryor does not always use his size effectively. He tries to he's too finesse sometimes, and it drives people crazy. That is why, of the multitude of reasons, 4 or 5 that he got benched. But he has talent. You're right, and he showed it last year. But he needs to get back to that, and coaches are always going to go with the guys that they trust. That's just the way it is.
That is true. That is true. We've seen that before. You want to talk a little bit about the defense?
Yeah. So yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, I think we should start with the D-line because here's what I had trouble reconciling, right? We spoke about this on our pregame show. We even played a clip from Jim Schwartz talking about Goff's mobility last week versus the Cowboys and how it's not just a freelance thing. It is a game plan thing to get Jared Goff out of the pocket and use his mobility.
Designed. All of it. Every single piece of it.
Right. I can't honestly believe that they had a whole week of practice and didn't game plan for misdirection and play action. But if you watch the game and never knew Jim said that, you would have thought that they were unprepared for misdirection and play action. There was a lot of breaking contain on the part of veterans like Brandon Graham.
Boy, you must have talked to the same guy I did, because that guy said it after the game that their contain rules were terrible. He goes, they all failed. They got an F. They didn't pay attention. I just want to throw that in there.
How is that? I mean, if you're a coach, you bang your head against the wall.
I know. I hear it in your voice. You're even pissed, and we're not fans. It's embarrassing.
I can't figure it out. If someone spent a whole week trying to teach me something and I did the opposite.
Really bad. They failed, and it's so funny. And I know I'm bragging here, but I don't care. We gave the answers to the test away in the pregame show that we did. We talked about the rules for the linebackers. Greg and Trey talked about it. It was such an education. Yep. I got to tell you, folks, I'm in awe of watching those guys work. There's so much about the game I don't know, and they're teaching us as we're having conversations, Geoff, with these guys. They're teaching us and our listeners and our viewers as we go along here, and they were talking about exactly this, but the linebacker rules. But what your lane is when he rolls out to the right or left, and they failed miserably.
Very, very poorly. Right. And I'm going to put a little bit of this on Jim too. All right. I know his linemen and linebackers are not helping him out. And by the way, his secondary was good at times, but not good. Jalen Mills hurt them. A lot of people think that the first touchdown was on Nate Gary, because you see him kind of trailing Higbee there. But you also notice Jalen Mills is rushing the passer as Goff rolls to the right. Well, he was not. I was told this. He was not supposed to be rushing the passer. He was supposed to be playing coverage in the flats. So he should have been in between, and Nate Gary shouldn't have had to rotate late over there. So that one was on Jalen Mills, and that's the second week in a row. The first touchdown is kind of a blown assignment and a guy out of position. So that to me is disappointing. But if a quarterback gets very comfortable on a certain type of play, right, a misdirection, a rolling out, then it's your job to start making him uncomfortable. And we know Jim doesn't like the blitz, but I thought he went too late to pressure. He started to do a little bit more in the second half. And you saw whenever Jared Goff had to make a throw from within the pocket, he was incomplete. He made almost 0 throws accurately from inside the pocket. So you have to wonder, why did it take almost 2 full quarters for them to try to contain him in the pocket? Some of that was on the break contain. Some of that was on Jim. I just don't think pressuring him in the way and bringing guys at him to get him uncomfortable with that same rollout.
All right, here's – I knew this was going to come up, so I'm just going to bring it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to come up at some point. I wasn't sure if it was going to be this game because of the style of play that Goff has, but I'm going to probably be wrong about this. I swear I mean, I know I had good information, but I just don't think it's going to happen based on 2 games. I know it's only 2 games, but they're not – from what I'm told, they're not doing disguise before the snap. They've never done it here, really, or very little. I thought for sure, and I know that Will Parks is not playing, but that has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make any excuses anymore. They're not. They're telling you what. This is the problem with this defense. Despite what Schwartz thinks, with the wide 9, you can disguise in the back end. That's just not true. I can only say this because going by what the tape tells me, but from people who've told me what I'm told, the people who grade the tape around the National Football League say with the Eagles, yeah, they've got talent. Yeah, Schwartz is a good defensive coach, but he doesn't make the quarterback ever think. He just doesn't. Other than the kid, who's the kid for the Jets who shouldn't have played last year, got sacked 10 times.
Falk, right? David Falk.
Yeah, Luke Falk. Yeah,
Luke Falk.
Right,
yeah.
but he wasn't supposed to play anyway. But anyway.
No, right.
But
yeah, I mean that was a layup for Jim to do whatever he wanted. To be honest with you, yeah.
Yeah. The bottom line is, when you look at this situation, he needs to start. I know he doesn't like doing it. I think every other team does it. You got to start disguising, because everybody knows what's coming. When you run the wide 9, it's just, this is what it is. You're telling people what you're doing. You're rushing forward. You don't want to blitz. We get it. You blitz occasionally, but you don't want to blitz. And the secondary is not disguising anything. You're not making the quarterback think. And as you just said, they knew what was coming, and they couldn't stop it.
No, and you alluded to it in our pregame show. You said the Rams player to watch, and if we had done our fantasy segment,
goddamn, why didn't that get on?
You said Tyler Higbee was a guy that's going to give the Eagles problems because he's a tough matchup for what they have at the linebacker level and safety level. And sure enough, the guy had 3 touchdowns, a tight end having 3 touchdowns against the Eagles. I can't remember the last time the Eagles gave up 3 touchdowns.
I mean, it was in the red zone, but
to a tight end.
Yeah, I thought they're going to get tight end screens because they're incredible at it, but
right.
They just I don't know. I don't know if they'll ever get there defensively. I just don't know if they can. Until Schwartz is willing to make the quarterback think out there. It's weird because he's a good coach. It's just it's just simple stuff. Like, I'm getting all my information from people from other teams. They all say the same thing. It's the easiest defense to figure out. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
They do no disguise.
I know.
Things got to change. Man. I don't understand, Geoff.
I don't either, but I did say that a lot of what we were going to talk about today were problems that are both fundamental and repetitive from things that we've talked about in the past. And certainly being a little bit predictable is one of those issues that we've talked about. Now that the game is over, Adam, you can repick a new Manscaped man of the game. Who was the man of the game?
Could it be either team?
Anybody you want.
Sean McVay.
Sean McVay. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Did a great job.
Yeah. My Manscaped man of the game is Tyler Higbee. I mean, clearly he made the impact plays that needed to be made, and he outclassed the Eagles linebacker and secondary level. You could give it to Jared Goff, but I was just so I guess fascinated by how bad Jared Goff was when inside the pocket compared to how good he was outside the pocket, that I just couldn't reconcile how he could have been one and so the other at the same time. It's pretty crazy.
One thing I do want to mention, the advanced scouting that the Rams had, they had the Eagles figured out. They had the Eagles defense figured out. And I like Laura Oakman's report on Fox. She said, I guess she could hear, I think it was she who could hear the Eagles coaches saying, I think the defensive coach is saying, cover your man. Whatever she repeated was exactly what the coaches were telling them. Like, kind of do your job. Like the players' lack of it's not just instincts. When you're playing below average linebackers, Geoff, this is what you get. Like they've been able to cover it up. The coaches have been so good. Look, they've made the playoffs the last 3 years. They won the Super Bowl. I get all that, and you could play with lesser linebackers, but eventually, Geoff, it could have come and bite you in the ass.
Yeah, no, it certainly did.
Yeah.
All right, well, those were our Manscaped men of the game. You know, it's that time. Our partners at Manscaped are here to save your boys from a Fletcher Cox-style hit so you can stay clean and take care of yourself where it matters most. Manscaped is here with a surefire touchdown with the best tools for your grooming experience. Now, everybody, if you saw our pregame show, you would have heard Trey Thomas talk about a little, a delicate, ticklish situation that he was involved with. regarding to male grooming, and it's just not a situation you ever want to be in. That's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team spent 18 months perfecting the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created, and just released a new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, which is simply the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of their ceramic blade and skin-safe technology, your snags will be reduced, and their Perfect Package 3.0 comes with the new and improved Lawnmower waterproof cordless body trimmer, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag for you to use when you're done quarantining. The Perfect Package 3.0 also comes with the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver. Now, the Preserver is an anti-chafing ball deodorant, which ensures that your afternoon stroll doesn't end up with your ball sticking to your leg. And the Reviver is a spray-on toner for your balls. It's made with soothing aloe and witch hazel extracts that will give your balls a boost. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ITB at manscaped.com. Take advantage of this limited offer from Manscaped's Pro Bowl lineup and try it for yourself. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ITB at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use that code ITB. This football season, audible from the ordinary, and choose Manscaped for your most important male grooming needs. Whew. All right. We didn't really get into defensive backs yet. Thank you. I try to be a professional. It's a family podcast.
By the way,
at least it was.
can we substitute testicles for balls? And by the way,
would you like me to do that? Okay, I can do that.
Your Brooklyn voice or your New York voice came out balls.
Yeah, I know. I always do that. I don't know why. I have no idea what brings that out. It's been like 30 years, and I don't know what brings that out of me.
Well, here's mine, and I do it, and my wife caught me, and my friend John Hansen caught me. I said "loik" a couple times. I was like, "Oh my God, that's so Philly." I didn't say "like." I said "loik." Right. What's wrong with me?
All right. Anyway. The secondary. Tell me you weren't holding your breath a little bit when Darius Slay went down there with an elbow. He slammed down hard, because everything we've talked about, Adam. Right now that Craig James is out, if they had one injury to a starting outside corner, they were gonna be screwed. But no, he was able to stay in, and that's good. I thought, though, in general, I told you Mills made that mistake on the first touchdown, and Roby Coleman got overpowered on that second one. I mean, he was kind of there, but Higbee just dragged him over into the end zone.
Well, yeah, and Higbee is almost a foot taller than him. I mean, it's just they had a lot of the Eagles had some mismatches coming to this game defensively against them, and it showed up. Higbee was my fantasy player of the game. We didn't get to it because we ran out of time, but that's who Geoff knows this. He saw it on my sheet. Eagles are an easy game. I'm to the point with Eagles defense now. I kind of know what's going to happen. If it's a team that it's got guys who can run, they're in trouble opposite Slay. Slay could hang with anyone, but it's the other corner, or if they have size, or if they're deep, if they're particularly deep. I said this game, they got 5-7. They have 6 or 7 pass targets in this game. If they're all healthy for the Rams, the Eagles are in trouble. And they were in trouble. And by the way, if Kupp does not fumble that ball, the Eagles are giving up 50 points. Trust me on that. Like, momentum, they were crushed on that punt. If he doesn't fumble that punt, was it punt or kickoff? I can't remember now. Punt, right?
That was a punt. A kickoff that he fumbled. Yeah.
Wait, was he on the kickoff? Was he
kickoff? Maybe it was punt. Now all of a sudden I can't
remember.
Whatever it was kickoff though. Yeah.
Okay. He fumbled it. Bottom line is, the momentum was all Rams, and that did change the momentum towards the Eagles. And you were like, wow, they were coming back now. Okay, they have to fight him. But speaking of fight, I still have a ton of confidence in Doug Pederson as a head coach. He should. I know the venom in social media on Sunday was they were going after Wentz, they were going after Schwartz. I get all of it. But Pederson has this ability to get guys to buy in, kind of like Andy would in his heyday with Eagles. By November, he'd start somehow, some way, when he had himself together as a head coach, he would get everything together by around before Thanksgiving. This is only 2 weeks. This is a strange year, but it's not like they're losing 40-0 or getting blown out. They're just having a lot of issues that they'll get eventually cleaned up. But the coaches also have to look at the way that they're delivering the message, because the mental errors in these 2 games by both sides of the football, defense had 1,000 of them in the second game, and in the first game, the offense, and then the receivers. Aaron Moore the new coach has got a job on his hand, Geoff. See, this is the other thing before we get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many issues with younger players who are not ready yet or that have to play. And then defensively, the issues at linebacker, folks, they have what they have. They're not going to bring anybody in who's going to help them, most likely.
Right.
You have the corners that you have. You don't have any depth at outside corner. Despite all this negativity I'm putting out there, I believe so much in Pederson as a head coach that I just believe that he's going to get a turnaround. It's only 2 games. Now, if they play the Rams week 8 and they were 2-6, I'd be way more worried. I'm not super worried. I know that sounds crazy. I just have this trust in Doug talking to players and organization with this guy, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
All right, I have a question that I want to be able to answer.
Well, where are you at with this, by the way?
Actually, this is what I'm going to get at with Doug and the direction of this team. I have a question that can't be answered this week, and maybe even not one win or not one loss, but I don't need to wait until the end of the year. I'm going to say about next 6 or 7 weeks we're going to get our answer. I'll tell you what that question is in a second. First, I want to give a shout out to our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. Always enhancing the fan experience with their great coverage of all 4 Philly sports teams like nobody else. Make sure you check them out on Twitter also at PHL Sports Nation. They do great content, have great podcasts. So head over to PHLSportsNation.com and check them out. And let's pause real quick for a word from another great sponsor. All right. Here's my question, Adam, that's got to be answered soon. I've always thought of Doug as a good coach because I've always felt like he had I felt like he was a strong leader. I don't think that part can be denied. The team always fights for him. And I did feel after 2017 especially, and even 18, that he was a pretty good play caller, that he always seemed to know the right buttons to push from a play calling standpoint to get his team going whenever maybe a slump would ensue. Over the last 2 years, though, I've started to wonder if maybe I was wrong about that. He was more of a leader than a great play caller. I remember thinking this about Mike McCarthy as the Packers when they won the Super Bowl in 2010, and they had all those guys on IR, and it just seemed like everything he did worked. And I'm like, man, this is going to be one of the next great play callers of our time. And then as time went on, it just, the offense there got a little stale, and you were surprised by it, and then obviously got fired at the end from 2 years ago. I would like to see in the next 6 or 7 weeks something out of this offense that gives me reason to believe that Doug's not just a good leader of men, but can stabilize this offense and come up with some good wrinkles here and make them explosive again.
Innovation,
innovation and more than be more than just the guy who the team fights for. Be the guy who outsmarts the other guy on the sideline every week.
Yeah, it was what you were alluding to earlier in the show tonight. Is that okay? Why didn't they come out doing some stuff with that with the new coaches in there? What are these new coaches bringing if we're not seeing it on the field? It's a fair point.
Right. At
some point soon, we're going to need to see it. The quarterback's got to be better. That's obvious. It's an inarguable point. We know that's the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they've got in 6 days from now. Today is Monday. It's 6 days from now. They've got an awful football team. It's at home in Philadelphia. If they cannot win that game, I'm going to be really super wrong. I've been already wrong twice on this team. Trey Thomas, give him credit. He picked the Rams. He picked a low-scoring game, but he did pick the Rams. Me, Cosell, and you, Geoff, we all picked the Eagles to win. I thought they'd bounce back. Sure, they were better on offense, but they're not even close to being where they need to be. And I still have a lot of trust in Doug Pederson, but you make a fair point. They got to start doing some things on offense to get the confidence back. There's no question about it.
All right, we'll have more tonight, Monday night, 6 to 8 p.m. on 97.5 The Fanatic, Inside the Birds Radio on 97.5 The Fanatic. I'll also be on 8 in the morning in case you're catching this early with Mark Farzetta and the morning team there at 8 a.m. So you can catch me doing my interview with them as we do that every week as well. Next week will be Adam's turn again. And, make sure you're checking out InsideTheBirds.com. I have my 10 observations from the game up. Andrew DeCecco wrote a piece on the linebackers, and we will continue to keep you updated with information that we get throughout the week. It's going to be, I know this, Adam, as we get out of here, it's going to be, if you thought last week was a rough week for Carson and Doug from a sports radio and a backlash standpoint, this week ain't going to get any better. And now Jim Schwartz is going to get thrown into the cauldron as well. So it's going to be a very, very interesting week
for
the fans.
It is, nothing changes in this town. I get it. It's like this in every market, but you've been here for decades. It's always about the quarterback in this town. I went through it growing up in Philly with Jaws, and Jaws took a lot of heat before Randall became the quarterback.
Right.
And then he handed off then Randall became the quarterback. He got all the heat, and then Bobby Hoying and Donovan and Michael Vick. Yeah, he was. He didn't take that contract extension. He should have taken it. Donovan, and then you go through the litany of quarterbacks, and it just doesn't. When you're the quarterback, you take the heat. When you're the head coach in this town, no matter what sport it is, particularly in social media, the social media venom on Sunday was. I thought it was bad in week one. I mean, some people said they're not going to watch our show anymore because they're sick and tired of us talking about things that aren't fun. Well, what do you want to talk
What?
About? Yeah, I had mute a couple people. Like they said, we're being too negative. No, we're telling you the truth. Don't you want to learn?
I kind of thought we've not been as negative as like 90% of the fans are. I mean, I think we're pretty down the middle on it.
We're being honest. I mean, I said it in the first show. I hate bad bleeping football. I just hate it. I'm okay when a team gets beat, 30-27. It's a great game. But we all saw, before we get out of here, the first 2 weeks. They haven't played well. There's no excuses here. Every team has to go through not having an offseason or preseason. Figure the bleep out. That's it.
I love it. Let's end it on that. Figure it the bleep out. And that's going to do it for Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on YouTube. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. All right. And also check him out on Twitter @Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.